everybody. Welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me, as always, are my fabulous co-hosts.
Hey, Rob, it's me, Diana Perry Cruz.
And it's me, Jackie McDonald. Look, I gave you my last name.
Jackie.
Jackie. There's a
like
song
that.
called Jackie. Jackie, spend the winter with me. Remember?
What is
That
that
was
song
good.
from?
Maybe.
From the 90s.
No.
Oh, no, I'm thinking of
I don't know.
Tony.
I know. There's
no.
Jackie, spend the winter with me.
Nope.
Oh, Jackie.
Nice.
And I'm going to lose my mind. If anyone knows I don't know who sings it, but if anyone does, write in. abainsidetrack@gmail.com.
Well, this isn't a podcast about arbitrary, obscure songs of God knows when. This is a podcast about behavior analysis and behavior analytic research, where every week we pick a topic and discuss relevant research articles, unless it's this week, in which case we don't do that. What do we do instead, folks?
Irrelevant research articles.
Irrelevant research. No, we reach into our research grab bag. That's right. Every now and again, maybe once a season, maybe to ring in the new year, we reach into the grab bag and we find some articles that are of interest to us that might be follow-ups from old episodes or unrelated to a topic, or we can't find enough articles on that topic to make an episode, and we discuss them here for you to hear our thoughts. And that's what we'll be doing with 3
Did you move into like
related articles.
haiku format there for
Yeah,
a second?
It's been
what happened?
I don't know. Yeah. It's been a little while.
It's been a year, right?
It's been
Here we
a
are.
year.
Now it's a new year.
In the new year.
We're in the new year.
Yep.
2025 is my jam. I'm
By
vibing
ringing
hard.
it in, by ringing it out.
And you know what? All the problems I had in 2024 that I said these are 2025 problems, turns out they're still here.
Yeah,
Oh,
problems
no,
just
they're not gone.
They're
kind
not
of go
gone.
until they get resolved.
I thought it was a clean slate.
Me too,
2025,
actually. I
clean
woke
slate.
up and I'm a new person.
Dana, what are the 3? Oh no, we'll introduce them ourselves. I
Ourselves.
suppose.
Oh, okay.
It's been a while since we've had a grab bag.
It does feel that way.
I forget the arcane rules that we have created over the years.
All right.
I want to go first.
Jaggy, why don't you go first?
I'm going to go
I
first.
was going to say, why don't you roll our 3-sided die and see who goes first?
I get to go
Which
first.
is impossible.
Actually,
it?
Dana, you would roll a d6 and divide by 2.
I would not.
Oh, I would never do that.
Sounds like you are not the dungeon master.
Turns out I am.
Okay,
Here we go.
Jackie.
Jackie has been playing D&D all this time.
No, just kidding. I've not.
Tell us about your article.
So my article I picked for purely selfish reasons.
Okay.
So last New Year's or last
Unlike all the
Wait.
selfless grab bags we've done before.
Are you going to tell us the title and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Last year in 2023, I had a New Year's resolution that I did not meet.
Boo.
I know. And this year I did, last year I did horrible. I didn't meet many of them.
Right.
And so I am rolling them over because usually I make all my New Year's resolutions. And so they're rollovers. One of them is have my dog be a canine good citizen. And that was not my fault. It was all of the stupid
dog's
training's fault and the dog's fault. Well, because the trainers kept changing the dates, and so I couldn't do the things. And then the other one was to get the screen time on my phone down to 3 hours or less, including using Waze and music.
Right. That's
Oh,
the thing.
That's
Yeah, so
really
it-
hard.
yeah.
A lot of it adds up
Right.
for those types of things
Right.
where you're not really.
Not really doing it.
Yeah.
So when I was perusing the articles, I found this one titled Effects of a Technology-Based Self-Management Intervention on Social Media Use in a College Student. And this was published by Magan Gandunu Hor and Campos. Did I do an okay job there?
so.
In Behavior Analysis and Practice. So this was published in June. So it doesn't have a volume yet. And so I was like, oh, maybe this is the answer to my problem. And so I dug it out of the bag because I could see it glittering in the bag. And this is the one that I want to talk about. And just like me, other people suffer from overuse of their phone. The article starts out by talking about social media being a problem for the health and well-being for all. And it can especially be a problem and damaging for youth ages 13 to 17 that they've recently discussed. And there's really so many platforms to choose from. So, you know, like I am on Facebook, Insta, and Threads, but there's also X, Blue Sky, TikTok, others, Reddit. You know, there's so many that I don't even know about. And what the research checks that 67% of people that use the World Wide Web, when they said that, I laughed. World Wide Web.
That can't still be what
I only
it's
ask
called.
Jeeves. I don't use social
I
media.
love Jeeves. But most of them are on social media platforms. So
Not me. I don't like
know.
social
I'm
media.
proud of you.
I don't even need this
There's
article. Throw it
also
away.
Snapchat.
Oh, yep, Snapchat.
Yeah.
Forgot about that one.
I'm going to take a nap. I don't even need to know this information.
But research has suggested that college-age users may be on their phone around 7.5 hours a day. What? So I clock in around 3.5 hours, including Waze, and I really wanted it to be 2 hours this year, and I did not. I got like
Waze really
3.5.
shouldn't count.
I know, so I need to change it, but still, I was using it more than I wanted to. What about you?
Yeah, mine is higher than that. But
Okay.
it is Waze. And then my walking app is on a lot, and that counts against me. And then I listen to podcasts on my phone, and I think that is also counting against me.
Right.
So I'm not like looking at the screen. I'm doing other things during all of those times, but they add up.
Yeah. So
And I also look at the social media too.
Right.
And it's part of my job for
Yeah, I
this
use
job.
my podcast player for like an hour a day. That doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, but that's okay, right? So they're specifically looking at social media use on social media platforms.
Oh, I'll tell you my social media use. Hold on one second.
It's 0.
Is it 0?
Well, it's a little bit of a luxury for you, though,
I use Reddit for 1 minute.
to be able to
Yeah,
do that.
that's true. Okay.
How is that a luxury?
Because I'm doing it for this
Oh,
Yeah.
job.
that's right.
Okay, so really social media is a mixed bag, right? So it has benefits, it has some risks. It's helpful to connect with friends and family, right? And that might be good for people, right? To feel that connection. It's helpful to find information quickly, but also can be really detrimental to your productivity. Doom scrolling, right? It can be bad for your wellness. It can be bad for your mental health. It also can result in sleep disturbances and in severe cases, addiction and depression, right? So
I also look at Substack a lot.
I don't even know what that is.
It's like a newsletter.
Yeah.
Oh,
I've looked at
Cheryl
some.
Strayed has a Substack on Dear Sugar.
Okay.
Just listening to the podcast, Episcopalian, called How to Midlife, or no, My So-Called Midlife.
Okay.
But anyway, so in the behavior analytic literature, they looked at 2 research articles at decreasing social media use, and both of them addressed contingency management, but they included reinforcers. And for the most part, they were effective, but not temporary. They were only temporary. And so non-behavior analytic literature actually used a lot of behavior analytic principles, including goal setting, time limits, and increasing response effort through the use of self-management. And so what they wanted to do is think about self-management. And I love this definition. The definition of self-management is applying tactics in the present to change behavior in the future. So simple.
That's good. I like it.
I really like it too. And so the purpose of the study that I'm going to review is to evaluate the effectiveness of a technology-based self-management intervention consisting of self-monitoring and delays in a college student's daily social media use. So let's see how it goes.
Okay.
So the college student was a 22-year-old white Caucasian female. She was a senior at a university who was recruited at a research fair where faculty presented their research. So they had a research fair, students could go listen to faculty, and then they're like, here are the available research projects that you could be part of.
Oh, cool.
I think that I want to do that. So the researcher at this fair discussed ABA and its applications with addictions, and the participant reached out and said she was concerned about her social media use and that it was disrupting her academic and personal life. So they did an assessment via interview, and they did a questionnaire and screened, what she was using, how long she was using it to see if she fit the profile of the study. And turns out she did. And the dependent variable was total duration of social media use. So, and that included any app that allowed you to like, share pictures, but not to call or to text.
Okay.
Right? So not like FaceTime wouldn't count. The messaging app wouldn't count, like calling wouldn't count. But
Substack would count because you can comment and like and like reshare
Substack,
them.
but she didn't use Substack. So
Yeah, just saying.
She added it up for the previous day and entered it into Excel. And it included Facebook, Instagram, and Reddit, because those are the 3 apps that she used the most. So they focused on these, and they focused only on her smartphone because she said that she only uses these on her smartphones.
Yeah.
They didn't do tablets or computer, which makes sense. I don't never look at Facebook on my computer or Instagram. It's just too hard. It's just not easy. And so researchers asked the participant to screenshot her total duration. You can look at your apps, your total screen time, and then send it to the researcher, and that's how they did IOA. So they looked at her screen time, and then they recorded her screen time in their Excel spreadsheet, and she recorded it in her spreadsheet. And lo and behold, it was 100%. Nobody screwed up in adding up what they should have done. And they used an ABC BCB design. So good functional control for self-monitoring. So they had baseline, self-monitoring, and a delay, and then just self-monitoring only.
Okay.
And so during baseline, they asked the participant to send the last 10 days of her screen time to the experimenter the day of her screening, so that there wasn't any reactivity.
Yes,
Clever.
I know.
So
I
clever.
love it when you can do that.
Right? So they controlled for effects of reactivity, and then they just combine the duration, because on the bottom it tells you how long you've been in each app.
Yeah.
And that was her baseline. And she had as high as 5 hours in baseline and as low as 90 minutes. But still, it was pretty high on a few of those days. I was like, woo! Like, the trend is definitely increasing. So then the B phase was self-monitoring plus delay. And so they showed the participant the day before they wanted the intervention to be implemented how to download this app called ClearSpace. I downloaded it and uploaded it to my phone. So we'll talk about that in a minute. That adds a delay to any social media platform. So they initially added a 10-second delay for 28 days.
Okay.
And then for the second and third round, they actually added a 30-second delay. So every day, the participant was sent a text by the experimenter to submit her total screen time from the day before, and that's the only feedback that she got. And when the experimenter received it, they said, "Got it," but not like, "You're doing great." So there was no reinforcement here. And so the self-monitoring was like looking at her duration, and also the delay was that when you go to the app, like say you're going to go to the Instagram app, you hit the Instagram button, and then the ClearSpace app pops up, and it makes you do something for 10 minutes. Like mine makes me breathe in and out. Or 10 seconds.
Okay.
Makes me breathe in and out, and it's like, are you sure you want to go to the app?
It's like a mindfulness-based social media.
Or then it's like, never mind. And you can like set like how long you want to go. So I just got into that.
Ooh.
Yeah. And then self-monitoring was the same without the ClearSpace app.
Okay.
So just like looking at being aware of like how much time you're there.
Basically being in the study.
Yeah, basically being in the study. So they did follow-up at 7, 10, 12, 17, 20, and 30 days. So it's important to note that the experimenter did the same. They texted the participant to ask for screen time. And the participant was told there was follow-up, but wasn't told when. So she didn't know that at the 7th day or 10th day that they were going to ask. So the graph is beautiful. Along the x-axis is sessions. Along the y-axis is total duration in minutes. And baseline is super high, right up to 5 hours. Once they incorporate the self-monitoring and 10-second delay, the first day is pretty high at 100 minutes, but then it drops down to below 50 minutes.
Wow.
And Evelyn's goal was 1 hour a day. That's what she found was reasonable. When they took out the ClearSpace app and just did self-monitoring alone, it did increase, but not back to baseline levels. And then when they reverse back to the delay of 30 seconds, she actually had 0 minutes of app for 28 days.
Wow.
Yep, and that was also replicated in the third C. So they don't know if once she got to the ClearSpace app, if she hit Nevermind to go to the app, or if she actually just didn't go, but they saw it was very, very effective.
Wow.
Yeah. So they said that the usage went from 5 hours to around 19 minutes overall, and it was a 93% decrease relative to baseline.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's beautiful. It was also affected of a 30-day follow-up. She had 0 minutes on her app, and they could check, right, to see if the ClearSpace app was used or not. So that was cool. And they suggested that as the delay increased, the function of the reinforcer for the social media decreased.
Right.
So, right, she's like, I don't want to breathe. Or like, I don't want to, it's fine. I can just never mind. And I did it today too.
That's so cool.
Was on my phone, and I was like, I'm just going to check. And it's like, breathe in and out. And I'm like, never mind.
Yeah.
So I turned it off.
So
I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
So is the sense that it's just a matter of social media's ease is part of sort of the reinforcement sandwich, and the second it becomes hard, you're like, this actually is not that important in my life?
Yeah. Yeah, and it just, if you were the response ever, and like, right, you have to wait, and you don't want to wait because it's about, like, you're trying to avoid something,
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So if you're not avoiding anything, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was a really cool study. And I just was so
That's super cool.
excited about it.
So I have a couple questions. How did they find out about the app to start with? Or did they make the app?
No, they didn't make the app. It's like a available app.
There's a lot of those kind of like mindfulness type or block this and there's
Well,
like
I have
really
one
tons of those apps.
that's like called Forest, and you grow trees when you're working, which I may have
I like
talked about
that.
on here
Yeah,
before.
this is like more like a self-monitoring.
Yeah, my
Well,
student.
no, it blocks you from using your phone.
Another one that my student's using after he read this article, which was so fun because I had read it and then he's like, I just read this article. I was like, oh my God, me too. He uses an app called The Minimalist.
Okay.
I'm going to try that one out too. But yeah,
Cool. And then why did they decide to publish with just the one participant?
they didn't say. Maybe.
Because I'd like to see this
They got bored.
replicated.
Just thought they published.
I think maybe it's a pilot.
Right. Like maybe there will be more research
I bet there'll
coming.
be more. Yeah. They were like,
They
oh
just
my
wanted
gosh.
to get it out there fast.
Because it's beautiful and there's not
Right.
a lot. There's a paucity of research.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I love that. Although I would have liked it if they mentioned Guinness and all.
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
there's not no research.
Yeah, but that's not on decreasing social media use. So that's increasing actual activity completion and using
Yeah.
technology as like a
Right. You're
break,
staying
but-
on task during studying.
Yeah, but still, they could have mentioned it. But only it's because I did that one. So I'm just.
I know.
But yeah, so I thought it was really cool, and I can't wait to see if my data match Evelyn's.
Wow.
Oh, and her social validity was amazing.
Well,
she
you would
was,
think
like,
if
so
someone said,
happy.
I
Right, and
really
she-
want to use less social media, and then they did to that extent, they'd be like, yep, loved it.
Yeah, I mean, she is self-selecting into this study, but I think a lot of people do want to decrease their social media.
Yeah.
I'm going to download the app,
I have it.
but downloading this app is going to count against me in my total minutes on my phone. Just kidding. What's it called for the audience?
It's called Clear Space.
Clear Space. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
And does it work it works for whatever you set it to
Yep.
block, or was just social
Yeah.
media?
I
Yeah.
thought it would be prettier.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's like dark.
It has 5 stars
Yeah.
with 5,000 reviews.
Oh, that's pretty good. All right. What did you talk about, Diana?
Cool. Well, I don't care about what Diana talked about. I want to go look at social media now. You've all convinced me. Look at social media for hours. Maybe we'll come back when I'm done checking all my TikToks and my X's. We'll be right back.
Hi. Do you want to be a BCBA, also known as a board certified behavior analyst?
Sure, we all do.
Now you can come to Regis College in Weston, Massachusetts to get your graduate degree, just minutes outside of Boston.
Choose from any one of these courses.
Masters of Science in Applied Behavior Analysis,
Masters of Science in Special Education, dual degree in Special Ed and ABA.
or be eligible for your postmaster certificate.
You can complete your degree and be ready to sit for the exam in 2 years.
And our 2022 graduates had a 92% pass rate on the BACB exam.
Come enjoy approved fieldwork placements, ethics mini handbooks, PhD levels professors, small class sizes, and a service trip to Iceland if interested.
And don't forget, our program is accredited by the Association of Behavior Analysis International, or ABAI, as a Tier 1 master's degree program.
Don't delay, supplies are limited. Learn more at regiscollege.edu.
Again, that's www.regiscollege.edu.
regiscollege.edu.
One more time, www.regiscollege.edu.
See you there.
Bye.
And we are back talking about what's in the old grab bag. But before we do that, we want to remind our listeners that ABA Inside Track is ACE and QABA approved. And by listening, you're able to earn 1 learning credit. All you need to do is finish listening and then go to our website, abainsidetrack.com, or click the link in your podcast player. You're going to need to enter in some key information like your name and such, but you'll also need 2 secret code words, which are also in the grab bag. Let's reach in and find the first one. Here it is. Crinkle, crinkle, reach, reach. The first code word is Mars, M-A-R-S, the red planet, or the candy company.
Candy company. What do they make? M&Ms?
Yes, they do. Probably 3 Musketeers. Blech.
Yeah, 3. Well,
Three Musketeers is substandard
Three
candy.
Musketeers is great. And Milky Way, then. If it's Three Musketeers, then they also make Milky Way.
That is like...
Which makes sense because it's the Mars company.
Talking about, an app that makes me not want to bother. If you gave me you get Milky Way before you can eat the candy you want app, I'd be like, no thanks. I don't want the candy that bad. But the code word is Mars.
It actually came from a game called Terraforming Mars.
Oh, that's what you're looking at?
Yep.
All right. So when last we left off, before I went and looked at social media and we took a break, Diana was going to reach into the grab bag. So Diana, I'm done. Social media, didn't have anything for me. So I'm back now. What do you got?
Okay. So my article is not about social media use, and it's one that I picked because I just thought it sounded cool when I read the title. And I'll tell you the title too. It's using a brief experimental analysis for writing speed intervention identification, which sounds like a lot of words thrown together. And I was like, what are we going to talk about in this article? It's also a brief report, just like Jackie's, with just one participant. And the authors are Schmidt, Krantz, King, Vetter, and Marushka. And it was published in Behavioral Interventions 2024. It's also hot off the presses. When I chose this article, I just based it on the title, and then I opened it up and I saw who the authors were. And guess what?
What?
The last author, Katie Marushka, is a Regis alum.
Oh.
Yeah. But this work, she participated in this before coming to Regis. So she did this as an undergrad.
Wow.
Through Kennedy Krieger.
And she's now in a PhD program.
Yes, she is. So shout out to Katie and all the other authors on this study as well. Hello, folks.
We miss you, Katie.
So I don't think we've ever talked about this term, brief experimental analysis, on this show.
I don't think
BEA.
So. No.
You know, they threw it around like, oh, everyone talks about the BEA, but I don't feel like I know about the BEA.
You got the BEA.
So I thought that our audience might also want to be familiar with this term. And it's nothing earth-shattering when you break it apart, but it is a useful tool. And when you have a name for something, I feel like it makes it easier to conceptualize how you might then use it later on, right? So a brief experimental analysis is an effective method for identifying interventions to improve academic skills. So we could think about this in other ways, right? And we've certainly reviewed other things before that are like, let's look at, varying prompting strategies and see how that affects skill acquisition. That's not dissimilar to what they're doing here. This is just calling it this particular name. And then the emphasis is on brief as well. So the idea is that you're going to try out a few different approaches to teaching something, alternating between them. And the way in which you're going to need to do that may depend on the skill that's being taught. But for this one, it was super easy to do this type of alternation and then make a comparison to see what seems most effective. It's an analysis or an assessment in that you're starting here so that you can identify what's going to be the best method to then teach the skill. So you're not directly teaching it here. You're just looking to see what's going to be useful. And I love this area of behavior analysis, and I don't feel like it gets enough attention because we in our field are, to me, uniquely suited to addressing these challenges related to skill acquisition. And it kind of falls underneath the umbrella of instructional or curricular revision as an antecedent modification approach. And we're really good at this stuff.
We are.
Right?
Yeah.
We're really good at taking a look at what's going wrong if someone's not learning something and figuring out, I say, like, you're putting your detective hat on, right? Figuring out what is the piece here that could be going wrong. And there could be a million different tiny pieces, but we are really good at identifying what those could be because we have a solid understanding of how environmental arrangements and varying antecedent stimuli can influence responding. So could it be something that's not working for the discriminative stimulus, something that's not working for the prompting strategy, something that's not working for the stimulus arrangement, the salience of the stimuli, etc. All of these components can affect skill acquisition, and some of those could be summarized within this type of brief experimental analysis if you're like really getting in there and trying to do nitty-gritty work and sort out what's going to be the best approach to take. So we focus a lot in our field on behavior reduction strategies for dangerous behavior, but I also think we have quite a lot to offer on the skill acquisition side. And I encourage folks to remember that and like put themselves out there in that way to say, hey, I can help look at learning, right? That's what we do is examine learning. So I liked this article for that reason too. Now, the context here is that there's just one participant. It's a 16-year-old student. Her name was Ellie in the study, and she was at an inpatient unit for examining her significant aggression and disruptive behavior. So that was the primary reason why she was there. But while she was there, there's also, other things that are going on. So they noticed that her writing speed was really slow, and it was slow enough that it was of note to everyone who worked with her, her teachers, her parents, and it was something of a concern or a challenge because whenever she needed to write something down, it was taking a very long time to do it, which was preventing her from doing other things. And they really weren't sure why it was, because she had a strong vocal verbal repertoire. She engaged in complex language. And then in terms of writing, she could produce correct letter formation and spelling. So they didn't think that it was, maybe like that type of issue. It was like kind of this other thing. And so since they were there in this setting, they said, let's take this opportunity to do this type of analysis and break it down. So that's what they did in this study. What they were looking at was letters per minute in a little short session, 5-minute long sessions, but they did them 4 to 5 times a day. And I'm going to explain to you what those looked like. What they were asking her to do was write down words. And so these words were either already printed on the worksheet, there were 5 of them per session, or orally read to her, depending on the condition. And she was just asked to write down one word at a time. And that was it, right? So that's honestly what they were measuring. They then took the words, looked at how many letters were per word, broke that down to make letters per minute. And in case you were worried, they went to great pains to ensure that it was all equal.
I love it when they do that.
5 words per page, 5 to 7 letters per word. And the words were picked from words that Ellie already knew, but then they put it through a random word generator.
Of course they did.
I know.
Of course they did. Somebody got super excited about let's put it through a random word generator, right?
Yep. So you know that someone was a big nerd on this author's list. And they made sure that it was all equal across the worksheets, etc. The reinforcer was pre-identified because it was this thing that Ellie liked the most. Guess what it was?
What? Her tablet.
Yep.
Because everybody loves tablets.
iPad, tablet. Yep, exactly.
Her social media use was high.
Exactly. I think she got 5 minutes of access. That one point that was slightly unclear to me, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened. So that was our setup. Now we're going to do the brief experimental analysis, or the BEA.
I wish it was called the bow.
Oh, like BEAU?
Yeah. Then you could be like, I love my bow. Anyway.
That's cute. It's set up like a multi-element design, right? Because I already mentioned that you're going to be alternating sessions. So they did that. They had an initial baseline, and then they also had baseline alternated with these 4 different potential approaches. In baseline, she got a sheet of paper, and they said, we're going to write words for 5 minutes. Do as many as you can. That was the instruction there. So the words were already printed out. There was no guesswork here. It was just like copy the word, basically. And so that was our baseline session. There was also a session called tracing. Here, the words are also on the right-hand side, and then on the left-hand side, it was the word but with dotted lines. So you just trace the word. Then there was oral, which was spoken word. So here the page was blank, and the person stated the word, and she needed to write it down, which seems like a different type of skill.
I agree.
And then there was the fixed ratio condition. So in this one, it was for every word you write. They were printed on the right-hand side. For every word you write, you get a check mark. Each check mark will equal 1 minute on the tablet at the end of the session. So that was my sleuthing to figure out she must be 5 minutes.
Good job.
Thank you so much.
I would have been like, math, I don't know.
And then the last session type was different. So this was called RDRM, but let me tell you that means response-dependent reinforcer magnitude. Here, she was given 7 words instead. And rather than it being a 5-minute session, the timer was set for 12 minutes. And they said, write the words. When you're done, you can spend the remaining time on your tablet. Ooh. Yeah, so again, they're like planning on it being 1 word per minute with 5 left over. But if she did it faster, then she'd get more time.
I like that.
Yeah, okay. And so through this analysis, and so these were alternated, like I said, in a multi-element design, so assessing these varying conditions. They included these the way that they did because they said that the tracing and the oral conditions were intended to identify if there was a skill deficit. So that's kind of what I just referenced.
They did that first because
Yeah.
I think it is so quick to go to, well, let's just figure out what reinforcement without actually asking, wait a minute, is this even a skill in this person's repertoire? Are we just setting them up to fail? So I'm glad they added that phase.
Exactly, because we also know that just having a strong vocabulary doesn't mean that you can then transpose words either from another textual cue or from an auditory cue. It's that they do seem to operate as independent response classes. So they were doing that to test for those, if there was skill deficits there. And then the fixed ratio condition and the response-dependent reinforcer magnitude conditions were intended to identify if there was a performance deficit, which kind of basically to me means was there a motivation deficit going on here. So that was our basic comparison. And then there was an extended treatment evaluation in which in phase 1, they chose out of the 4 types, the one that had the highest and the lowest letters per minute. And they did a quick alternation of those with the baseline. And then in phase 2, they chose the 2 conditions that had the highest letters per minute and did a comparison of those with the baseline. Okay. So that's what was set up. In the initial analysis, we had the 5 different conditions going, which were baseline, tracing, oral, fixed ratio, and then the RDRM, which was the 12-minute one. And they looked to see which one produced the highest number of letters written per minute. I'll tell you them in approximate order. Tracing was lowest.
Tracing's the most boring. I'm with you,
Okay.
Ellie.
Then followed by baseline, then followed by oral, then followed by RDRM, and then the highest was fixed ratio. Okay? But there were several overlapping data points. Fixed ratio was pretty much differentiated from all others, as was tracing, high and low. So then after that...
Wait, what does that tell us? Why
What?
am I blanking?
She had the skill,
Okay,
and not
thank you.
necessarily
That's
the
what I was
skill.
wondering.
I was like, I
That's
don't
what I
know.
was looking for. I was looking at it and I was like, I can't remember what the 2 are. So the skill was
it's
there.
a busy graph.
I mean, that's an assumption, though, right? Like, that's
Right.
a leap. All that I would say that this tells us is that the tablet was motivating and it was clearer that it was functioning
Okay.
as a reinforcer
That's what I was
when
asking.
the check marks were being provided.
Yeah, the graph is. I mean, it's a nice like multi-element design graph because you do have some differentiation. But I blanked, and so
Yeah.
I just need a little help
But who knows, right? Like, tracing was lowest,
because it's boring.
potentially because it was boring, but also like even though I was going to say this later, but even though we see this differentiation here and we're able to analyze this, we still don't know why she was slow at writing
Right.
beforehand, right?
That's true.
I wouldn't consider this a functional analysis of slowness of writing.
Right.
So it could be a lot of reasons. It could be that the entire thing was really boring. It could be that
And RDRM wasn't the highest.
it was not,
Which is
in
interesting.
this analysis. Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be that doing this meant delaying other things that were harder, right? Or, and this is probably the one that would be for me, it could be that she's like got some perfectionist qualities, right? And she wants to
Yeah.
make it look really nice and pretty, which to me would explain why tracing is the lowest.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to like make it map on.
See, now I think that could be, but I think you're also jumping to a bit of a
I
conclusion
know. I said
as
for me.
well.
For me.
To me, this looks very much like this is a student who can write, does not want to for a reason, It's not all that the student cannot do it or that is very difficult. And when there is enough motivation to engage in this task, will write. Now, this doesn't rule out something like, what about writing about a preferred topic or a non-preferred topic? There's a lot of other variations
we don't know.
you need.
This is like,
However,
the
at the end of
simplest
the day,
writing,
the student can write. And if there is enough reason to write, will write.
I feel like that's me going to my job.
Jackie can job.
Jackie can job.
But
With
is
enough
there enough
motivation,
reason
will
to
job.
Okay. And then they did a back to baseline. They did the phase 1 comparison, which was the fixed ratio versus tracing versus baseline. Tracing was lower than baseline, which holds to my theory, but also fixed ratio was higher. So that, held water. And then they did the phase 2 comparison.
Maybe it just means she hates tracing more than anything. I would rather create my own words than trace.
Maybe. You're right.
She's an artiste.
You're right. Yeah. Don't tell her what to do.
She's her own lady.
I know.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
I
She's like,
respect
I don't want to trace.
Right? See, for me, I'm like, ooh, tracing.
Yeah, I like trace. That'd be fun.
And then in phase 2, they compared the two highest, which was fixed ratio and the RDRM, where she had the leftover time. And those were undifferentiated high in comparison to baseline, which was stable and lower.
Which is interesting, though, because I know you're not supposed to do this, but I usually do. If you compare the rates in phase 2 to the rates for the initial multi-element, they're very similar, right? Like they're both in the high 20s. So it's not, or in the moderate 20s. So there wasn't a change in response rate, right? Like she didn't instantly.
She did not increase over time.
Right.
You mean? No, she did not. And 20 letters per minute is not fast.
Right. It's not fast.
It's 3 seconds per letter.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's
and that's
pretty
the
slow.
fast. That's the fastest.
So
the lowest is
saying.
around 5 letters per minute.
Wow. That's slow.
Yeah. So to give some perspective on why this was targeted.
Yeah.
It was
That is slow.
It was very
I
slow.
want to observe what this writing looked like, because the idea of if
beautiful.
someone said you're going to write five words, and I was writing a letter every, Louise, like 5 letters per, how many minutes did you work it out for?
5 minutes.
5 minutes, right? 5
Oh,
letters.
no, sorry. No.
Oh.
What? Say it again,
5 or
Rob.
12 minutes.
Oh,
What?
Just, I imagine at some point it would take so long to write the letters that I would be like, I'm going to lose it. It's so boring. I'm just sitting here writing letters and it's so slow.
Yeah. And I don't know.
I want to see, was she struggling? Did she seem
5
stressed
letters
out?
per minute was the slowest. I would maybe forget what I was writing.
Yeah.
Like the oral one, especially.
What are you doing in between writing these letters? Like, are you that focused for the entire time?
I mean, I'm envisioning her being very focused, but they didn't
or she
say.
looking, she writes a letter and she looks around for a while. She gets her phone. She does the breathing for 30 seconds before it lets her go on social media.
Yeah.
It's happening.
Right. So you can see why perhaps it was something to intervene upon. Although we just have the one participant here. I don't believe they did any social validity that I noted. Yes?
What? Why is this a study?
What?
It doesn't feel very dissimilar to other studies we did on, say, escape maintained behavior. We did where they had a whole litany of steps to do almost this exact same thing of looking, is it a skill or a will problem? How can we ameliorate if it's a skill? How can we add motivation if there's not? What's different about this other than the use of the multi-element and the addition of the tracing to sort of try to mush some of those components into?
Well, I don't know about the tracing,
the one
but
intervention. Well,
yes,
it's the issue
it's
that
an
you can't write
application
or
of this
don't want to
particular
write or some combination
style of experimental analysis to the skill acquisition question specifically, which I think is a very useful demonstration of how one can test quickly for best practice. So yeah, it's not that this hasn't been done in other ways. The unique thing here, I think, is that the behavior that was in question was one where they could do this type of rapid alternation and not run into challenges that you often do, and that you end up trying to teach multiple stimulus sets and need to use an adapted alternating treatments design. None of that was happening here because the behavior that was being utilized was truly a free operant and didn't really require skill building in that way, right? So the behavior was already within the repertoire. They were just attempting to change the speed or the basically frequency with which it was occurring. So that allowed them to do this rapid alternation much easier than if it had been something a little bit different. So I think that this is a unique application, one, again, that we don't talk about a lot. So I found it to be useful.
I don't find it non-useful. It doesn't seem too dissimilar to a lot of other types of studies.
Much research is not dissimilar to other types of research.
No, but in a way that strikes me as, haven't we done this before? Hasn't there been like a study exactly like this? Like it doesn't feel like it's much of an extension. I might be missing something. Nor do I think it is not valuable, but I sort of would love to see, okay, well, what can we do with this now? Is this better than some of the current systems for assessing skill deficits related to writing and kind of motivation for writing?
Well, I didn't even cover like the background part of this study because I was just trying to get to the the procedures, but there's just not a lot out there either looking at this type of skill. So I think that there were multiple ways in which this was a novel application, and I found it to be quite useful. It is true that research builds upon other research, so you only need to make a few small tweaks for something to then, warrant publication as an extension of previously established research. But to me, this involved a lot of different applications, different uses. I thought it was cool. The BEA.
Okay. Well, it's my turn. Let's see if mine gets the same level of concern, because mine is very similar to other articles I've read, so perhaps I should have remembered what my article was before commenting. Now Diana's going to rake me over the coals. Okay. So I chose an article called All for One and One for All, mostly because I love the title, The Good Inclusion Game by Graham, Keenan, and Dillenberger. And that was in Behavioral Interventions 2024. And it is an extension of research on group interdependent
all for
design.
love and what was the Three Musketeers? All for one.
Oh, I thought that was I'm thinking of Anything I Do it for You from Robin Hood.
No.
Yes. Look into my eyes.
Nice.
That's Bryan Adams only, though.
This is Richard Marx.
When you get them all there, it's all for one.
Is that it?
For all. Oh, sorry. I'm a little pitchy there.
Never going to find out. I don't think that's how it sounded at all.
Okay. Well, that's my song, copyright me. It's really great, I'm sure. So this is an extension of group interdependent design known as the good behavior game. But what if it were focused on cooperative behavior between students and was done in Ireland as well? Would it differ?
Yes.
So the thought process behind this article was taking a lot of what we know about the good behavior game, in which you have multiple teams or two teams of students, you have some target behaviors, and there's a lot of variations. But the original one is when the students engage in rule breaking of some kind, one of the targets, they get a mark on the board, and any team of students that is below some level of challenging behavior or target behaviors wins a prize of some kind. There have been kind of flip-flops to that, where instead of it being you get these many points for breaking a rule, more I score points at certain intervals when certain teams are following the rules. And this is more an extension of that version. There's been some research to support that some teachers prefer that version because they don't want to call out kids for being bad. Some teachers also don't like the idea of teams because they don't like the idea of winners and losers, even though everybody can win in the good behavior game. So this is an extension looking at what if, instead of just looking at like following the rules behavior, what if we looked at inclusive kind of friendship behaviors? So this stems from...
I feel like it's a good extension.
It's a neat extension. I like it.
It was Bryan Adams.
Was it Bryan? Who? Bryan Adams did the other one too, didn't he?
Bryan Adams was also in the good behavior
He
game.
wrote all the songs.
All for One and One for All.
Yeah, the song I sang?
I don't think it sounded like that, but yeah.
But tell us about it.
Yeah, listeners, write
Richard
in.
Marx sang, "Wherever you go, whatever you do."
What movie is that from?
I don't know. I think I just had the cassette.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you want to talk about the good behavior game, I hear.
No, I want to talk about the good inclusion game.
Okay.
You missed my beginning because you were too distracted looking up this arbitrary thing. Anywho, there was recently in Ireland, the Special Education Needs and Disability Act of 2016 had been passed, in which there's a real kind of rededication to having students receiving the same educational content and experiences with supports when needed. And also a view that many students with special education needs, or SEN, which I like much better than SPED, special education,
I like it too.
which is such as a negative connotation. It shouldn't, but I think people have often used it in ways that are kind of derogatory, and SEN sounds kind of Irish in a way.
That could be the case.
Anywhere. But anyway, we like it here.
Maybe we should flip flop. So in Ireland they can use SPED, and in America we'll use SEN, and everyone will say, "Ooh, I love these new terms," even though surprise they're old terms maybe. But in any case, there's a real acknowledgement that students with special needs can be bully targets or socially rejected in classrooms because of those needs, because of some of their disabilities. So what if we took the good behavior game rules, and instead of it being about, hey, sit in your seat, hey, raise your hand, it was about, hey, share with your friends. Hey, include them in conversations. Hey, talk to them a little bit more. Initiate social interactions, right? So here was how do we increase inclusive behavior? And there had been one previous study by Coyle and Dillenberger in 2019 looking at taking this group contingency and having the reinforcers delivered contingent on the children engaging in behaviors like communication and sharing. And it was one of those kind of magic studies where the results were, yes, we did see an increase in inclusion. We also saw increases in social participation for students with and without special needs. And we also saw decreases in disruptive behavior, even though that wasn't the point.
I think me and Dillinger would be best friends.
Dillenberger?
Dillenberger. I think we'd be besties.
Why is that?
I don't know. I just feel like it.
You got it. You got that sense?
I got that friendship vibe.
Okay. There you go. I mean, they did a study all on increasing friendship skills, so I suppose it's something they care about. They were like, I guess we have to study this now.
Like, oh, I hate friends.
Even though we hate people, but we'll do this study. I'm pretty sure they really were into the idea of friendship and making friends. So our current researchers said, well, we've got teams, but the idea of let's increase inclusive behaviors, and we've got two teams kind of against each other, but not really against each other. What if everyone were on the same team? It's a real snowflake idea, I guess, but let's see what happens in the research, shall we? So we'll have one team. Does it work the same? So this research took place in a small town in Northern Ireland in a classroom with 6 to 7 year olds and 27 students. 4 of those students had special needs. There was one male teacher, and they had a target.
Wow, it's like a unicorn.
Yeah, really.
Male teacher.
They had one SEN student who was sort of the target. He was a 7-year-old autistic student with mild learning disability. I was a little unclear because it seemed like they were taking data on all the students, but then sometimes just this student. So I was a little unsure of exactly why they only wanted to have this data on one student. Maybe it was samples, but they didn't show those in the research. So I'm not sure. They seemed like they had everything they needed, but they didn't necessarily report on all the pieces I would have thought. Usually when you have that one student, you only have that data, but they kind of had all the data. So it was a little strange. So the targets of intervention
2 layers of data
were initiation and sustained interaction, meaning students asking for information, asking for items, offering or asking if others needed something, they needed help, any sort of positive or general comment. So that was any sort of interaction. The sustained really had to do with it was some sort of a response that maintained an interaction. And if there was 5 seconds without an interaction, that became scored as a new interaction. So they looked at that as their samples of inclusive behavior. They also looked at inclusive praise and the point delivery of the teacher. So does the teacher start using behavior-specific praise for these same targets?
I like that.
Yeah.
Like, are you going to then imitate the kids?
Yeah, which is important because there's a lot of research showing that teachers do not deliver as much behavior-specific praise as needed. And there's a whole body of how do you get teachers to say nice things to students more frequently, which sounds like one of those well, it's pretty easy, right? Don't they like the kids? But it can be deceptively hard. There's a lot of things that are vying for teacher attention. So sometimes praise is just not one of them. So they gave the teacher a script about the good inclusion game. They talked about the goals to help share and care for each other. They set up rules that had examples, show teamwork by talking to each other, share with others. They set out the rules to the students saying, if I see you find the rules, you'll get a gig point on the board and you have to work as a team to win. If they got 5 points as a class, they got some sort of a prize. They already had Class Dojo, which is one of those online portals for taking data on if students are engaging or not engaging in certain behaviors. So they just sort of modified the system that already existed as their visual. They did 20-second partial interval recording for the targets discussed. They had a treatment integrity checklist that the teacher would follow about, how are they delivering the good inclusion game. They're reading the script. They're showing the scoreboard. They put up a poster with the rules. They remind the rules. They say, the game's starting now. They had a timer. They would then deliver points according to the timer going off. And then they gave behavior-specific praise paired with any of the points. Usually they played for about 15 minutes or until whatever activity they were doing ended, which, since they were 6 or 7-year-olds, was usually about 15 minutes. Then they'd add up the points. They won, they didn't win, and then they got the reward. And then they took down the scoreboard, which is sort of the signal that the game was or was not in effect. So we've got our baseline where the researcher just kind of sat next to this target student to hear and record all their interactions. And then they just kind of watched a bunch of lessons. They specifically chose, I think this is a good idea because classroom data can be very difficult because there's so many different activities. They specifically chose lessons where the students actually probably would have interacted. So, silent reading would be a crummy lesson to take data on because the children would get in trouble for constantly talking to their friends. So they picked lessons where the students were probably going to interact and recorded the interactions only with the target student. And they told the teachers, do your thing. Again, they were already using Class Dojo, which again, the kids all had these little avatars and they would earn points for appropriate behavior and they could earn no homework passes, which 6 or 7-year-old no homework pass seems like the homework's not that hard at 6 or 7 years old. Maybe it's harder in Ireland.
Who knows?
I don't know. But they needed 100 points, and the teacher never gave the kids enough points to earn a damn thing.
Oh, no.
So probably not the most effective system. Then they did their teacher training, where they had written and verbal instructions. They modeled the procedures. They said it only took 20 minutes. So I don't think they did a lot of role play with this. And then they kept using the Class Dojo, but they sort of made one avatar that everyone would use rather than all the kids having their own avatars. And they trained the teacher how to do a fixed interval of 30 seconds to do, and then a 10-second limited hold. So boom, vibrate, your pocket, the pocket timer vibrates. You got 10 seconds to look around. Anyone engaging in inclusive behavior gets behavior-specific praise and a point. So, it would only be a few kids could win points every 30 seconds or so. And then they, began the intervention. They used it across a couple different lessons where the interactions occurred. They had a poster on the wall. They changed the avatar to just their group avatar. And then they had these 15 minutes times. If they won the prize, hooray, positive tone. If not, a neutral tone, and said, we'll try again the next time we play the good inclusion game. And they did 15 sessions, about 2 to 3 days per week, never more than 2 in a day. And then they do some social validity. They did a questionnaire for the teacher, and they had a classroom discussion. I love the classroom discussion social validity. It's fun to, if you've ever done that, it's very fun to sort of hear what kids thought. I've recently been in some classrooms where we're trialing some good behavior games, and it's always fun to ask the students, what do you think? Because most of the kids usually say things like, it's fun, I like it. And then there's usually 1 or 2 that are like, I hate this, I don't want to do it anymore. Which was kind of what the results they had in this study. But anyway, they had an ABAB withdrawal design. They followed the What Worked Clearinghouse single case research design criteria, which I'm not going to go into all that, to determine whether there was kind of an effect magnitude here. And so in our initial baseline, we saw that inclusive behavior was low, only about 2.2 to 17% of the intervals they were scoring. They saw an increase in inclusive behavior when the good inclusion game was in place to about 40 to 62% of intervals. When the good inclusion game was withdrawn, they did see better inclusive behavior than initial baseline, but again, it was lower and there was a descending trend. So it went down, it was 8.8 to about 37.8% of intervals. So better, but again, not as good as when the gig was in place. They saw a nice increase when the gig went back in place, about to the same levels, 46 to 55% or so of intervals, but they saw a much more stable trend, so less variability. So it sort of seemed like the game was catching on and the inclusive behavior was catching on. The target pupil that they were looking at showed a very similar pattern where there were low rates of inclusive behaviors at initial baseline, a slight increase in initiations with the gig, but then they saw kind of a decreasing trend. But the sustained interactions showed only an increasing trend, which could be because only so many people can initiate at a time. And if more kids were engaging with the student, well, if people are coming over and engaging with you, you don't need to initiate as much, perhaps. No real change in initiation at the return to baseline, but a descending trend in sustained interactions. So any interactions were not happening for as long. They saw a slight increase in initiation behavior when the gig was put back in place, and an increase in sustained interaction, which again,
well, that's good.
You'd love to see increases in both, but realistically, you can't always see increases in both because, one student always initiating probably is also not socially appropriate. You want to have sort of a mix of who's initiating and not. Peers kind of had a similar similar patterns with, as the target peer as well. The teacher behavior, this was great. Inclusive praise was pretty low and stable at the beginning. When the gig was put in place, they saw an increase in that praise. When they returned to baseline levels, though, you saw, or when they did the withdrawal, they saw a return to baseline levels in praise, which is kind of weird because you would sort of think the teacher might continue engaging in this behavior for reasons other than there is or is not an intervention in place. But I guess it's just like any other behavior. I always chalk up praise as one of those, like, once you learn to do it, don't you just do it more? But I suppose I don't know why I'm surprised. That's not actually the pattern we ever see in research, which is kind of sad, but oh well, that's just how it goes. And then a return to more behavior-specific praise around those inclusive skills when the gig was back in place. And they did see an increase in the delivery of points, but over time, there was kind of a drift where the points started
When they took
dropping.
it out, did they say the gig is up?
I'm sure they did. They didn't report that exactly, but I can't imagine they didn't.
Right. Why would you miss that opportunity?
I guess. The teacher really loved the game. 15 out of 17 students enjoyed the game, including the target student with educational needs. One said they didn't like it. One said, I don't know, it's boring and too much work, which is odd because they were going to do the work whether or not they were doing a game or not, but hey, whatever. But a lot of kids said nice things like, I love sharing. It makes people happy. I love that we get to help each other, which is really sweet. So the design, also met the What Works Clearinghouse standards with reservations. So this was a good research study in that regard. So would you want to add the gig to your classroom to work on social emotional learning skills, including inclusive skills? I would say this is very promising in that regard. I think one of my issues with social emotional learning is if you don't define the behaviors that you're looking for explicitly, this can all sort of fall apart in the wash. So as long as you're doing that, which they did here with inclusive skills, I think this could be a really nice way to sort of add a good group design that isn't focused only on appropriate class sort of social school readiness behavior and really more looking at some social behaviors. So good idea. And it doesn't seem that you need to have any competitive contingency at all. I'd really love to see, and the authors wanted to see, what if we put the two again? I know it's against the spirit of the design, but what if we put the one team good inclusion game against the multi-team good inclusion game? Would one do better than the other in terms of increasing inclusive behaviors? Because that would be interesting. Also, would the gig be a good alternative to just doing lots of other interventions around behavior-specific praise? Because we did see an increase in behavior-specific praise while also an increase in the students' social behaviors, which, ideally you would probably see that. 2-for-1. Yeah, but you might see that if you just trained behavior-specific praise to the teacher. So that'd be another question that one could ask. Also, some questions about how good do teachers have to be at delivering the points while still seeing an impact, which reminds me of a lot of the studies that, we looked at when we did some episodes on stereotypy, where you could get down to like 70 to 80% procedural integrity with, I think it was response interruption redirection specifically, and still actually see effective treatment gains. So does it matter that the teacher's missing
right,
points?
But there's a different mechanism at play there than here. So you might not see similar efficacy.
No. But how much? Because I think anything that's sort of like, if you can do this about 80% correct, you will still see great results, is going to get more traction than if you don't do this perfectly, it won't work at all. So again, I'd love to sort of get a little bit more, maybe some like parametric analysis kind of work on that. Yeah.
I like that.
And again, so is this something that teachers will like more? Because some teachers do like to have the teams in certain research. If you did this for longer, would you see more social skill generalization? So a lot of fun questions that you could do. And the authors, even though one could say this is just the good behavior game again, do feel that there might be a value in having the good behavior game as sort of this umbrella term under which we have lots of individual variations that are focused on specific behaviors. So the good inclusion game, another one they mentioned is the timely transition game, which sounds like it's probably from Britain. It sounds a little British, perhaps not. But there's just lots of ways you can use interdependent group contingencies that aren't just the old 1969 version of the GBG.
Do you think they wanted to title this article #GigLife?
No, I think they liked All for One and One for All because they heard that awesome song in their head every time they were writing it.
Why not both? Just put it all in there.
All for One and One for All, #GigLife, the good inclusion game.
Yes.
I think at some point the editors would be like, we're rejecting this paper. All right, that's enough. Churlish.
This was really cool.
Yeah.
I did not want to hear about the GBG again, but I really liked this article. See, that's how you give constructive feedback to your podcast partner about the article that they chose.
I'm sorry. I just thought it was worth mentioning. Anywho, that's the end of our grab bag episode.
That's the end of our podcast.
We're so close to 300, but I had to call out the article. My bad.
All right, we're done.
We're done. That's it.
There's no pairings for grab bags.
There's no pairings. Hey, I think sometimes when we do grab bags, it's like 3 articles, and they're kind of interesting. This did feel a little more cohesive in terms of we all picked articles around interventions that, you know what? I think we all kind of said, I kind of want to try that, or that might be kind of useful. So that was nice. I think we'd love to see more with academic / reinforce, motivation assessment, more inclusive behavior increases, and then also looking at decreasing social media. I actually had a couple thoughts of students who really are struggling with how easy it is to have screens in schools, where screens are now also your textbook. And hey, guess what? I can also look at my social media instead. Would this be something useful for students who are struggling to maintain focus, or not, because perhaps they're not maintaining focus because the work is boring compared to what they can see online? But for students who are just sort of struggling with that, would that ClearSpace app be helpful? So some things to try.
I do feel like we all have a type of article.
I mean, I sort of picked mine because I picked 2 articles, the last grab bag, and I was like, which one do I like? They both have hilariously awesome titles. And then I said, wait a minute, we'll do another grab bag someday. So I kept this one in my back pocket. But yes, I usually do.
That's why it's so crumpled up.
I snuck it into the bag when no one was looking, so I could do it. Well, that's the end of our podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to ABA Inside Track. There's going to be another episode next time. Don't worry. We also want to say big thanks to a lot of people, including our listeners. If you want more ABA Inside Track, please check us out at abainsidetrack.com. You can email us at abainsidetrack@gmail.com. And if you want even more content from us, you can go to patreon.com/ABAinsidetrack to subscribe at whatever level you like. But if you subscribe at the $5 level, you're able to vote in our quarterly listener choice polls and get a free CE for all of those listener choice episodes, as well as see the raw video footage. You get everything a week ahead of time. And if you want those special 2-hour-long book club episodes, as well as 2 free CEs, you can join at the $10 level to get all of our book clubs right when they are released every season. We just released our episode on The Science of Consequences by Dr. Susan Schneider, who we also had as a part of that episode. You may have heard that in the preview feed. And soon we'll be coming out this spring with our next book club on divergent minds. So look forward to that, but only if you're subscribed on patreon.com/ABA Inside Track. Well, we also want to say thanks to Dr. Jim Carr for recording our intro, outro music, Kyle Sturry for our interstitial music, and Dan Thabit of the Podcast Doctors for his amazing editing work. Oh, yes, and we almost forgot. You probably want the second secret code word for CEs. Well, I'll tell that to you now. It is freelancer. 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 I don't know where that word came from, but it's on the list, so I'm reading it now. And with our code words out of the way, that brings us to the end of the podcast. We'll be back next week with another fun-filled episode, but until then, keep responding. Bye!
Bye!